Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode number 33 of Cardboard Time. This is Arwen, and today we're looking at a few games I've played recently. I'm going to be flying solo again today, but we do have a interview with Chris Solis from Solis Game Studio in the second half. So a little bit of content up front about what I've been playing recently, but make sure that you stay tuned for that interview on the back half. It is really good. Today's beer of the day is the Hofbrau Dunkel. I went to the Hofbrau House in Buffalo for my mom's birthday with my mom and dad, and I've got to say, I absolutely love the balance on this. Despite it being dark, it's got a great drinkability and sweetness, and it's only 5.5%. So you can have a couple of them if you want, and you're probably going to want to. Lots of malt to it too. I think basically anytime that I swing by the Hofbrau House, there is one in Cleveland, this is going to be a must-have. And I gave this a 4.5. I really love this. Very drinkable, and definitely need some more Hofbrau Dunkel. Well, now it's time to check the shelf of shame, and it is at 149. That is down 1, and sub 150, which is great. 5 new additions, so there's been quite a bit of activity. 3 games came from Gots a Lot of Games. Took a little trip up there and picked up Equinox and Mercado de Lisboa on sale. Equinox, I really love the artwork on that, and Allie's been bugging me for a while to pick that up. Reiner Knizia game that has been rebranded a few times. This one just kind of hit the spot with the different creatures that were on the cards. I really love the artwork on that. And Mercado de Lisboa, how could you really go wrong with a light Vital Lacerda game? I mean, come on. I had to pick that one up at the price point. And Iberian Gauge, I absolutely wanted to support Amabel Holland. I've been following her on Twitter recently and wanted to check out one of her games, so I picked up Iberian Gauge. And Doomlings came in, finally, from Kickstarter, so I was excited to see that at my doorstep. And Sovereign Skies was a very deep discount game from Deepwater Games, which I said, well, I've wanted to play this for a while, why don't I just pick it up? And quite a good deal on that. One-day little sale that just got an email about and said, why not? Played 6 games in addition to Equinox, Mercado de Lisboa, Doomlings, Sovereign Skies. I also played Corrosion, and I will have my thoughts on that once I do get to play it with some other people. And Set a Watch Swords of the Coin is the other game that we got to the table, and I will be talking about that later this episode, along with Doomlings and a couple of other games. So why don't we just jump into what we've been playing, and I wanted to start with Cape May from 2021. This plays from 1 to 4 players in 60 to 120 minutes, designed by Eric Masso, and the artist is Michael Menzel, published by Thunderworks Games. In Cape May, players traverse the city streets as entrepreneurs, developing property while building wealth over 4 seasons to earn prestige. Build cottages, develop them into Victorian homes, and upgrade them into historic landmarks. Establish shops and grow them into profitable businesses, carefully move around the city and make strategic use of activity cards, complete bonus goals, then take some time to relax and spot wildlife in the best place for birdwatching in the northeastern United States. Whoever best balances their income, development, movement, and personal goals will go down in history as the most successful developer of Cape May. So Just to clarify, this was a review copy that was furnished by Thunderworks Games, and I just wanted to be upfront and transparent about that. This was a big departure from the themes that we're used to seeing from Thunderworks producing. So normally I'm used to a lot of games like Role Player and Lockup and Cartographers, kind of more of the fantasy theme. So to see them kind of diverge from that a little bit, I was very, very intrigued to see what they were going to do with this. And I absolutely love the theme on it. The gorgeous game art that this game has really does convey the theme and the sense of what period it was in American history. And I didn't know much about Cape May, and I'm still kind of learning, but getting these action cards that kind of came out, and I'll discuss those in a minute, really kind of gave you a little bit of a history on Cape May, what it was, and what went on there. I didn't know about all the fires that were going on, but that was something that I discovered and was actually implemented into the game in a pretty cool way. Couple of complaints I do have, and they're fairly minor. The red and green shop and house tiles and the other colored components, not necessarily the three-dimensional shops and mansions, but just the tiles themselves and the meeples were a little bit of an issue for me for color blindness. We wound up playing with the yellow and blue pieces, and we were fine. But when you do get more of a higher player count, that could be an issue, especially if you're red-green colorblind. So that was one issue that we did notice. The bird watching, while incredibly thematic, really seemed to kind of take a backseat to the building and area control aspects of the game. I played it with Allie, and I was able to integrate it a little bit more than she did, really trying to stop on those spaces a little bit more and try to make the best of them. It's definitely something that you can integrate into your game, but if you're really, really going for that area control element, it's probably going to be something that you either minimize or kind of skip over. And then some people have said online that there's a lot of moving parts, specifically the round tracker. I can see that. I didn't really have too many issues keeping up with the board. I basically appointed myself in charge of keeping up with it, so I think that would be a smart thing for players to do, is to make sure that you assign one person to keep track of that and make sure that that round tracker is moving. So back onto a couple of other things. Random events, like I talked about, really did add a nice flavor to the game. Without adding too much swinginess, I know that random events can sometimes really swing the game in favor of one player or the other, and we didn't really experience that. You could still do what you wanted to do within reason, so they didn't hinder you too much, but they did add some flavor and spice things up a little bit. They also make each game feel a little bit different depending on the order and the cards that come out. This was fairly easy to teach. There's a lot that's going on the player aid itself as far as symbology and that, but I really didn't feel like once you got into it that it was that overwhelming. And it gave you a nice reference to know what your prices were, what you got as far as income, laid it out for you in a very nice way. And it was a very easy reference to kind of look at. But very heavy on the strategy, and you may lose a lighter player on this one. It's a little bit borderline for those newer players that really don't have any experience with games. But this is one, if you're looking for that next step, I think that people will be fine with this at a medium weight. Upper light, lower medium should be able to pick this up. And of course, people who are a little bit more experienced than that. And then the production quality is absolutely outstanding. Again, it's a gorgeous game with very gorgeous artwork, and the meeples were very good. The sculpts on the mansions and the shops and that really, they almost weren't necessary. I think you could have gotten away without them, but having them in there made the game board just so cool to look at. I was glad that they were in there. So, my final thoughts on this game, this really could supplant El Grande as kind of my favorite area control game with how easy it is to explain and get to the table. The theme combines very well with the mechanisms, and this is an absolutely gorgeous game to look at. It is staying on my shelf, there's no question about that. I do foresee this getting played a little bit more, possibly with heavier player counts. And again, probably will have to do something with that red-green issue that I'm having. Just make sure that I'm able to distinguish between those two. But other than that, quite a good game. Really, really enjoyed Cape May. Had a great time with it. And I think that you might as well. And now on to a very new release that is Doomlings, which plays 2 to 6 players. It is from 2022 in 20 to 45 minutes. And designed by Eric McCoy, Justice Meyer, Andrew Meyer, and Chris Svela. The artist is Justice Meyer and published by McCoy and Meyer. In Doomlings, players are species inhabiting a distant planet trying to compete for supremacy by scoring the most points before the world ends. Players will play traits to score points and activate effects and will potentially be hindered or helped by different ages that the planet goes through. Once a catastrophe card hits, the next era starts. Once the third catastrophe hits, the world ends and players score up their points. The player with the highest point total wins. So, if you want to go back for a little bit of my history with this game, take a look at episode 11. I did an interview with the team behind this game. So on to my thoughts of this game. This was the first time that I had gotten my hands on it. I did back this on Kickstarter, and I was very, very impressed with the production value on this. The cards were a very heavy weight. You got some hollow foil cards as well that were kind of random that were put into the box, and excellent production value. Very, very impressed by that. This game is extremely easy to pick up and play for anybody. It's about a 5-minute teach. Super quick to pick up for the teacher, and then the people that are playing the game, also very easy for them to pick it up as well. And then not a huge amount of times where you wouldn't be able to explain the effect of something. The game length was definitely quick enough not to overstay its welcome, but it was long enough to keep everybody at the table very satisfied. It is take that heavy. I will say that for people who really don't like take that games and really kind of want to stay in their own space, this does have a lot of take that elements in it, but they didn't really feel heavy-handed. And I will compare this to another game at the end, and I will say that there are games that feel much more heavy-handed and much more unfair than this did, and I really appreciated that about this game. Super cute artwork. You're basically dealing with all these little round balls that have these expressions on them. They're the Doomlings, so they're super cute, but you're talking about a super serious topic with the end of the world. So I thought that the artwork provided a nice juxtaposition between the subject material and the gameplay and the artwork. I thought that was really cool. And then there was a double coding for color blindness. The color and the outer border pattern both matching up. I did not see a reference that told which outer border pattern corresponded to which color, but that's the only improvement that I could see to make with this. So I'm assuming that anybody, and probably somebody will very soon provide kind of a little reference card for those people who are colorblind to be able to match those up. And then some cards actually do refer to a color in text. That would be nice just to have that little linkage between the color and the pattern on the outside. I think that was the only improvement that I could think to make in this. So for my final thoughts on this, I would absolutely consider this to be a much better, newer player-friendly alternative to a take that game like Munchkin. And that was the game that I was talking about that I was going to compare this to, with a lot of take that, with a lighter, newer player friendliness. this game blows that out of the water, and I would never see, another reason to really get Munchkin out while this existed. I preferred this. I thought it was a little bit more easier to play. The rules were a lot easier. There wasn't as much interpretation. This was much more straightforward and streamlined. I thought this was a great little portable card game that's really satisfying enough for all skill levels. And one of the things that the team mentioned in their interview was that they wanted to create a game that was inviting and fun for everybody. And I really think that they hit that out of the park. This is satisfying for just about every single skill level. Probably your very, very heavy players aren't going to necessarily like this one, but just about everybody else that wants to get together with their family, friends, people who don't necessarily play board games and card games all the time, this is super easy to pick up and super satisfying. So definitely staying on my shelf. I am going to be getting this out probably quite a bit with the 2 to 6 player count with some of my larger groups as events happen. Have a couple of couples over. It's going to be very easy to hit the table. So I see a lot of Doomlings in my future as well. And now on to a 2020 release, and this is Pocket Paragons. I'm finally circling back to. This plays 2 players from 3 to 15 minutes, designed by Brian McKay and published by Solis Game Studio. Pocket Paragons is an intense 3-minute duel with asymmetric decks. Players pick a Paragon's deck of 7 cards from a large assortment and take the deck into their hands. During each round, each player will choose a card to play simultaneously. Once both cards are revealed, characters either take damage, have their card canceled and sent back to their hand, or are immediately defeated. The first player to defeat their opponent is the winner. So this is a sleeper hit from PAX U from me. I thought that this was incredibly underrated. Came from absolutely nowhere. Like, I did not see this coming. I didn't hear about it. I had no idea. And then we went to the media publisher event ahead of PAX U, and this thing was so cool. Met the team there, sat down for a game. I looked at it and I'm like, okay, this is kind of like a deeply strategic rock, paper, scissors game. I get it. That's cool. This really feels more like a perfect kind of capture of a fighting game into a small, compact card game. There's a lot of strategy that goes into this, but it's an amazing format with 7 cards. Really, really enjoyed that. Just how compact it was, just how small of a footprint that it could take up, much like a lot of button shy games. But you have this strategy and intense outwitting your opponent and trying to outthink them. One of the other things that really struck me was the execute mechanism. So basically, if you play the right card while your opponent is resting, if you attack them with your super high attack as they're resting, you immediately defeat them and win. So it's really a matter of, when do I play my cards? What order do I play them in? There's counters, so you're constantly trying to play your opponent as opposed to playing the game, which I thought was really, really cool. And it keeps both players into the game with the execute mechanism, even when one is low on health, keeping both of those players in the game and keeping things exciting. This is very easy to explain, very easy for newer players to pick up. There's absolutely no color vision issues. Everything is very simple and text-based, so there was no problems with that. And one more comment that I wanted to make is that the solo version is also fantastic as well. It's very simple, intuitive, and puts up a great fight against you, especially when you have these little challenges that come out. They get extremely difficult to defeat. You really have to bring your A game and have a little bit of luck on your side as well. I really like this. This is probably going to be packed with me for small on-the-go duels with others. So I can take a couple of sets of these, give one to a friend and say, here, let's pick this up. Let's do a couple of rounds. We can switch. Each character feels different, so it just provides such a great feel. It sets up quick, plays quick, and you just want to keep playing. So this is 100% staying on my shelf, getting more content as it's released. I'm already looking forward to more content out of this game. I picked up a bunch of it at PAX U, and I will definitely be picking up some more Pocket Paragons. And you're going to want to stay tuned because after I talk about this next game, we are going to have an interview with Chris Solis right after the break. So make sure that you stay tuned for that as well. So that was Pocket Paragons, and the last game that we are going to talk about at the front of the episode is Set a Watch Swords of the Coin from 2021. This plays from 1 to 4 players in 60 to 75 minutes. It was designed by Todd Walsh and published by Rock Manor Games. The kingdom is in grave danger once again, but our mighty adventurers are nowhere to be found. The king has stepped in and offered to pay any mercenary for taking up arms against the darkness. This quest falls on the shoulders of 4 mercenaries, each with a unique set of skills to band together and vanquish this evil from the kingdom. Set a Watch Swords of the Coin is both a standalone game and an expansion that can be combined with the original cooperative game. Featuring all new characters, this bunch of adventurers has to be motivated to work together. Every round you will visit all new locations and pick an adventurer to rest and get paid to take camp actions. You can use this coin to purchase powerful items from the new merchant board and item deck. These items will assist the rest of the party on watch as they battle a line of all new creatures trying to make their way into camp. It is still a battle to keep the campfire burning. Use your wits and skill to fight for the light, or all will perish in the darkness. So I played the original Set a Watch at PAX U with Jamie, and I immediately picked up the expansion the next day. I loved it. I had a great time with it. I thought that it was a very, very clever game, and I was itching to get Swords of the Coin out to the table. Finally did with Allie, and I'm so glad that I did. The expansion, for those who have played the base game, like the description said, it does add a merchant that you can buy very, very handy items from. Things like increasing your range, which is incredibly handy on melee characters. I will definitely say that giving them range is a great idea. What stuck out to me the most, though, as I was teaching the game, instead of having it taught to me, I was using the theme to do so. So things like tending to the fire, scouting ahead, they all made sense, and mechanically they also made sense. Kudos to them for kind of tying things together, and that's smart design and nomenclature. Again, I played this with Allie. She's getting some experience with games, but, you know, she's still on the lighter side. She did pick it up extremely easy. We were up and running after we got a round going. It was super easy for her to just catch on and pick up and be very effective. So the asymmetric power skills all felt unique. Allie couldn't get the Heretics powers syncing up for her very well. Personally, I loved the Bounty Hunter most of all. The Barbarian was fun. The Witch was very fun. She played the Witch as well. And we had a lot of fun with using the powers, but the Bounty Hunter can actually take trophies and use those trophies as an assistance to help them defeat enemies. So there's some really cool powers in there. Again, the utilizing the box as part of the experience and making it a board is just smart design to me. Use the box to your advantage. Don't have too many components. I love that. I think that that's a great idea. This does have a very big game feel in a small package. So with the dice placement, you're able to go and kind of get that big game experience, but not have to lug this huge box around with you, which everybody knows by now. If you've listened to me at all, you know that I'm a big fan of those types of games. And this does play a little bit long the first time around. I found It does take a little bit to kind of get rolling and know what your options are, know what your abilities are. But once you do, by the end of the game, it does roll on very well. So I would say that 75 minutes for the first game might be a little bit more around 90. But once you really know what you're doing, things do move along at a pretty good clip. So for my final thoughts on this is an amazing experience. This does add more content on top of what is already a stellar game that I love. The merchant mechanism was very welcome, feels right at home to newer players. So people who jump into this without playing the original, you're not missing anything necessarily, but you are able to just jump right in, and the merchant mechanism is very, very intuitive. No danger of this leaving the shelf, and again, I will be looking for expansion content to this in the future. So that is Set a Watch, Swords of the Coin. Well, and stay tuned because after the break, we have an interview with Chris Solis from Solis Game Studio. Welcome back, everybody, and on today's interview segment, we have Chris Solis. He is the designer of Temporal Odyssey and games producer at Solis Game Studio. Solis is a publisher of games like Frenemy Pastry Party, which looks absolutely adorable, by the way, and a game that's certainly been getting a lot of buzz around social media lately, Pocket Paragons. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So can you tell our audience a little bit about your history in the gaming industry?
I started off in video games doing user research for 2K games. And at some point I was like, yo, I kind of like board games. And I went to go make an indie board game out of my garage kind of thing in like 2013. And eventually that led to opportunities in tabletop games. I worked for Level 99 for a couple years. And at the start of 2020, I decided to go start Solis Game Studio and publish my own titles, along with doing studio work for various other board game publishers. And that's how I got to where I am now. During COVID lockdown, the timing of going solo was probably truly terrible, but it kind of worked out in favor because I got to like bunker down in the garage and like just make games for a solid year. And that's how we're here now.
Well, very cool. And we met at PAX U this year. I got to try out Pocket Paragons, which certainly, again, has a lot of people on social media talking. And initially, I had described it as a very, very strategic rock, paper, scissors. But the way that I kind of view it now after playing multiple rounds of it is it's more like a fighting game in a compact card design. Can you tell us a little bit more about the game?
Yeah, so it's definitely designed to be like a micro fighting game. It has a whole one more game feel. We want people to complete the game loop and then go again. So then that way you can begin to think about your opponent as opposed to like the card effects and whatnot. And that's reflective in the game's length and the execute mechanic. Also over here, we're a huge fan of fighting games. It's things we play all the time. I'm familiar with the fighting game community, and I love the design of fighting games. We wanted to make sure that that feel was embedded into Pocket Paragons and have this Yomi system. Everything has a counter, everything has a counter play, and you begin thinking about your opponent outside of the game. And that's how we get landed with Pocket Paragons.
And can you detail a little bit more about the development process of not only the original Pocket Paragons, but the expansion content to it as well? I know that you have a solo mode out and multiple different expansions.
Yeah. So it started about 7 years ago when I asked my friend Brian McKay if he wanted to work on a game with me. This is like 2013 when we came up with the idea of a game called Rise of the Paragons.
Oh, wow.
He's the game designer at the heart. I did some dev work. Some of these I've injected some ideas, but he is the game designer. And over the last 7 years, we've gone through a lot of different shapes. It was like this longer 30-minute game where you have like 3 characters, like an RPG game. There was a version where it's kind of like Pacific Rim, where you play as 2 characters and you have to play abilities at the same time to get like synergy bonuses. And then we eventually got down to the idea of like, what if this game is just 5 minutes? And what if instead of, getting the execute doing bonus damage, you just lose? And it started off as like an absurd idea, but it eventually allowed us to compact the game idea down to this 5-minute cycle. And then we were having a lot of fun, and we realized we should call it Pocket Paragons and make it now. So it's funny how much time it took to make this small asset count game, but it's been an idea that we've been thinking about for years, literally years. Now, regarding the add-on content, let's talk about Aegis and working with Breeze and Zephyr Workshop. There was a Gen Con where we were pitching the mech pilot version of Rise of the Paragons to Breeze, because Breeze is the mech guy, right? He just loves robots and stuff. It's like, hey, we have a game idea for you. And we pitched it to him about simultaneous action where two people control mech, you put the cards on a reveal, and then that's your mech's attack. And, before that, I was kind of friends with Breeze, but I think after that, we developed a business relationship, and now we're, actually friends. We kind of, hang out on Discord and stuff. We have, it's a little closer than just a partnership. And once it became Pocket Paragons, we're like, yo, we should totally do a crossover. He plans to make Aegis 2, and it just seemed like a good idea, and we did it. That's how we ended up with the Aegis Pocket Paragons. We also have Rivals of Aether Pocket Paragons, which is a platform fighter on Steam. That kind of stems from my involvement with the Smash Bros. Community. I've been playing that game for actually 20 years, and I'm pretty familiar with most of the people in it. So, I just kind of sent Dan, the owner of Rivals, a tweet. I'm like, hey, you wanted to make a card game? He said yes, and then we sent paperwork a week later. So it's really straightforward.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think that would happen normally, but I think because we have so many mutuals, even though we haven't actually met, that it was fine. And then, we sent him proofs. He likes our work. And we plan to showcase Rivals of Aether Pocket Paragons at fighting game events like Genesis CEO.
Oh, that's so cool. I love stories like that where people are just willing to take a chance and say, hey, why don't we do this crazy thing? And then the person on the other end is just like, yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
I think it leads to some really, really cool ideas being brought to life. And I love to see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, I don't know, we sent him a sample, of course. And I think that when he saw the actual fighting game nature of the game, that, it probably has a lot to do with it, as opposed to just, this is a card game with fighting game characters in it,
And talking about Breeze, I think it's really interesting hearing your story interacting with him, because he is a mile a minute for anybody that knows him. And that sounds about right. We're going to try to have him on in a future episode, and that's pretty much it. That's his absolute 100% personality of just go, let's get this done, let's work together, let's grow this community, and let's come up with cool stuff.
Yeah, the amount of times I've ended up in a retreat or a space with Breeze for several days at a time is very high, and it's always like that. We would do cons together. When I used to work for Level 99 Games, I subcontracted him to come help me run these cons. So we would go and for a week or two and be like, okay, we ran this con. Now we're going to hang out at this Airbnb for 4 days and work on our games. Then we're going to run another con. And then on those 4 days, we would just game design, talk about games, talk about movies, and just jam ideas. So it was, Pocket Paragons Aegis is almost guaranteed to happen, right?
So any future plans from yourself and Solus Game Studios?
Actually, let me take a step back to Pocket Paragons content. I just realized I didn't talk about the solo mode, and I think there's a fun story here. So when we did the Kickstarter, we're like, I guess we got to have a solo mode, right? And we made up a solo mode, and it ended up being really good. I'm almost embarrassed on how good it is and how little effort we put into it. Brian did such a good job on it. So we put it in the game, and we're like, this is so good, and we're giving it away for free. So if you did the Kickstarter, you got the solo mode for free. Later, we made it a SKU because it was better and less confusing that way also. Here's some solo mode cards, you know what to do with them. We wanted it to be a product on its own. I'm just so excited on how well received this solo mode is. And I didn't really get it until somebody shared this piece of information with me. I'm like, who are these solo gamers? I don't get it. And somebody told me, it's a good way to make any game a co-op, especially for non-gamers. If someone wants to show their friend Pocket Paragons, they don't have to go to head-to-head. They can just do a solo run and then win the game together. And I was like, that's great. I'm really glad that we did it, and that makes me want to always have a solo mode from now on for anything we make.
Well, in one of the other conversations I was having today, we were talking about solo gaming and just how much it's proliferated. And I think one of the other things is being able to go in and learn a game and then share it with others. So it kind of aligns with what you were saying where, okay, you could play it co-op and share it that way, but you can also learn it and teach it, and then you can play it with the original intent with your friends as well. So that's what I usually use the solo mode for if it's not a solo-only game.
That makes sense. And that's great, especially for more complex games. You can try it out and get all those little rule bumps out early, right?
Absolutely.
So, it's absolutely critical to board game design, and it's funny, like, it just didn't really hit me until we got the solo mode for Pocket Paragons in there. We call it training mode. So yeah, we definitely have plans for other Pocket Paragons content. Like, our idea and our vision on it was that there's a Pocket Paragons box, and it has content from a certain series. Then you can get that Pocket Paragons box, like, at their respective booth. Not necessarily our booth. So like at PAX Unplugged, you could go to the Aegis booth and get the Aegis box, right? And of course you can come to our booth and get our box. Like, what if there were more? What if you're at a show and there's 3 places that are selling their respective Pocket Paragons, and then you can just get any of them, play them together, and play in line, and just run into opponents at a con. So it's kind of, its whole approach is very much convention culture to kind of like get people to play these quick games with each other.
I think we've forgotten a little bit about that with cons going away, just how intriguing and exciting those little pickup games that you have either going on in line or sitting down at a table, maybe eating lunch, and all of a sudden somebody comes by and they see that you've got something out and they'll just walk by and say, hey, I've got that too. Let's sit down and play a match. I've missed that. And I think one of the cool things about coming back to conventions are those spontaneous interactions.
Absolutely. And like, it seemed like it was going to go away because, we're planning Pocket Paragons and then COVID hit and we're like, well, rip. And I wasn't sure if we were going to have to like hard pivot. We waited. The PAX Unplugged that just passed is our first show. And we're like, we'll do it, and if it ends up being a bad idea, we'll just try something else. But I think you're right. People are excited for these kind of interactions and reasons to connect. So we're hoping people find that with Pocket Paragons.
Yeah, and you just don't make those same connections online that you do in person. And it was a huge relief to be back and just kind of talking to people spontaneously and meeting up with people and saying, oh yeah, I've seen your content on the internet, or yeah, I've heard about this, tell me a little bit more. Those kinds of interactions don't really happen online all that much. So it was nice to kind of get back to that.
Yeah, because you're at PAX and you're there to discover, right? So you're already in the mindset of like, I'm willing to be given information that I'm unfamiliar with. It's different than me sitting down on my computer and, going through my ritual. There's just a higher discovery rate. And you get to combine it with meeting new cool people. Like, the amount of people I've met at a con that I'm close to now is pretty high. People like Breeze. So, right?
Perfect example.
Yeah. We hope to create a Pocket Paragon set for different series and then respect that series within the box. Like the Rivals of Either box. In that game, it's a platform fighter. There's a lot of movement. You can't block in that game, right? So the Pocket Paragon's characters literally don't have a block function. They just have more like, we'll call it movement, the equivalent of movement, like a lot of denial options. And we try to capture that feeling of Rivals, and by getting their core mechanic and making it the same core mechanic in the box. And we're hoping to do that with future Pocket Paragons content as well.
No, I really like that. And one of the interesting marketing strategies I saw was opening up my box for Pocket Paragon's Origins and seeing those little dividers with the promo characters in there. And I got a ton of promo content from PAX, but I'm missing a couple of the characters, and I find it very interesting, the fact that now I've got to come see you guys again and swing by the booth again at future conventions because I need those characters now.
Yeah, and you can see what else is up too, yeah. Our whole idea with conventions is that we will have one of those dual sets at a show, and that dual set at that show is free. So if you show up, we will give it to you. Then moving forward, then it becomes an item that gets bought. We want people to consistently be playing Pocket Paragons at a convention. And if you can come to our booth and get something for free to share with people, that'd be great. Like you said, you also want to fill that box, right? Like, we designed the box to fit a massive amount of characters, so you can kind of like complete the box. If you were to get all 4 existing Pocket Paragons boxes, it fits exactly in one box. and you have a divider for every character.
Any thoughts for season 2 or future content?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot of ideas, and we even got some approaches at the last PAX Unplugged. Like, several people want to work with us, so we'll see. I can't say who or what, but I think that we'll find something here, especially since our print run is being evaporated. So I don't think it's going to survive January, and then we can reprint, and we'll probably do another. We're probably going to do a game found for the reprint, and then we'll maybe introduce new content at that time. We're still working it out, but I think that this spring you'll see some Pocket Paragon stuff on there.
Very, very cool. Now I want to pivot a little bit, and the Solis Game Studio website mentions that it is Latinx owned. Have you seen much of a shift in diversity and inclusion in the industry in the past few years, and how important has that been to kind of growing the hobby?
Yeah, I've definitely seen a shift, and when I think of a space that's fighting very hard to be inclusive, I think of tabletop games. I see a massive amount of activity from that group than over other groups that I'm part of, and I think it's something that feels good. It's something that I want to be a part of, and it's something that I want to make sure that the way I run my family business, it can highlight that. It can show that this is good. So I kind of built my company around the idea of my morals, who I hire, making sure it stays a family business, and then make it profitable. Make it a company after that, I feel like we see too much of the reverse.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think the vibe that I got from your booth was just this very organic kind of family and friends, type of company. And, oh yeah, we sell games too.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's true. I mean, we're hanging out. We're having a good time. Okay, running the company is a lot of fun. Let's put it that way. So I do the producing stuff. My sister does a lot of character design. So you'll see in our future games that she's the one who really makes these characters and makes these character sheets. She likes to illustrate. She's also really good at storytelling, so she helps me with the lore. It helps me with a little bit of the marketing. That's like most of the chunk of the work. My sister and I. Then we have contractors that we work with. Some of them are friends, and some of them are people we hired. We keep it small, and we don't want to lose control. You know what I mean? We want to make sure that we can create the space we want, where it's fun and it's a business. Come hang out with us, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely got that feeling, and it kind of felt like friends and family, which is very inviting and very welcoming. So you're doing a great job of that. What would you say your other interests besides board gaming are? You've mentioned Smash Brothers and the fighting game community. Anything else outside of that?
Yeah, so I will say that's like my biggest axis. Like, what else? What do I do? I'm going to boot up a fighting game and play it like literally every night, just for a few minutes, or check out the community, or go to those events. Like, I like going to those major events and getting my friends together and be like, yeah, we're gonna get like sweet, I'm gonna play video games all day, right? And then I will go home back to reality. Outside of that space, I'm trying to learn guitar. I'm real bad right now, but I wanted to learn an instrument, and it's been too long, so I'm really focusing on learning that. I like to draw. I like to write stories, and that's one of those things where, like, a lot of the things I like to do for fun ultimately feed back into Solis Game Studio. Where I'm like, oh, I'm writing a little story. Wouldn't this be a great setting for a game? And then it goes nuts from there. So really, I just I have fun all the time. That's all I do, and then I sell those ideas. So.
Any particular genre of music you're looking to play?
It's hard to say. Right now, I'm still exploring exactly what I'm gonna play. I mean, I like classic rock and I like acoustic rock. I'll probably start there, but for the first songs I learn, I'm not sure what that's actually going to be yet. We got a ways to go here.
I gotcha. Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. Still in those very introductory stages so far.
Yeah.
Now, Super Smash Brothers, you being a big fan of that, who is your main that you run on there?
So I'm definitely the Identity Crisis kind of player, where I would switch my main like every 2 months. But for the last year, I've stuck with Marth for Ultimate, and that's going pretty good for me. So I feel like I really know this character right now. I like the idea of the bonus damage with the right spacing. There's definitely a Pocket Paragons character that's exactly like that. So I think it's going pretty good. It's really reflective, of how I'm thinking at the time. I used to play more aggressive characters, and now I'm playing more patient characters, as I found myself just being more of a patient person. So I think that's kind of funny.
Well, I mean, we evolve as people. Why wouldn't our character choices evolve as well?
Right, yeah.
So what is on your table from a board gaming perspective right now other than Pocket Paragons?
We love Radlands and the Power Rangers deck building game.
Mm-hmm.
And, let me take a step back. The amount of games that come through here is insane. Like, we have a box that we got from PAX Unplugged with, like, actually 30 games in it. And we just kind of, like, traded with every other person on the show floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bunch of games there. Then we have even more from my former roommate who also gets them. So we'll play, like, a different game every single time. We'll never play the same game twice. So if we play a game more than once, like, we love it. We have played a lot of Radlands and a lot of the Power Rangers deck building game because we actually like super into it. We're like, okay, you guys want to get sweaty and play again? So we'll keep going on that. So yeah, we really love that game. Radlands is extremely impressive, not only from a game but from like a product perspective. Like just the way they did the box and the rule book, and like it's inspiring. It's so good.
Oh, the aesthetics on that are absolutely insane. We just played it for the first time last night. Jamie and I did, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
It's so good. Like, just wow. I love the little box they made. I love the card layout. It's so good. I can go off on it all day, so let's probably shouldn't.
Anything else you'd like to discuss?
I guess I can tell you a little bit what's in the future for Solus Game Studio. Other than Pocket Paragons.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on a game called Space Line. It's kind of like being a commanding officer in a game of StarCraft, the card game. And it has a very poppy comic book look. So that's going to be our next like IP, we'll call it. I also work with Brigger Creative. And a piece of Solus Game Studio makes it into various games through them. Kind of like, hey, Chris, can you do dev? Or Chris, can you do the rulebook? Or do you want to do card layout or producer? So we actually work on a lot of games a year, and I'm sure you'll see them over time.
Awesome. And how can people keep up with you on social media?
Yeah, so the best place is Twitter. You can follow me personally at CGCFox, or you can also follow the company at Solis_studio. You can put that into the description of this later. Twitter's definitely the best place. And then from there, you can follow us at Instagram and Facebook. But Twitter's where it all begins.
Awesome, Chris. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. And looking forward to getting some more Pocket Paragons out.
All right, well, thank you for having me.
And I believe that will do it for us today. Make sure to check out our website. Our Instagram and Twitter is at cardboard_time. Take a look at our Board Game Geek podcast page. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas for discussion topics, please email cardboardtime@gmail.com. And as always, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for another episode of Cardboard Time. Happy gaming.